Hi there, this is a process video for a recent piece in my Circle of Life series. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay down some isopropyl alcohol onto the substrate, which is Graphix craft plastic here. And I'm using 99% isopropyl. And I'm going to lay down some T-Rex ink. So on the bottom left I have Purple Twilight, top right a GNC, and then I'm going to lay down Sea Glass in the bottom right, and some Monsoon in the top left. However, that Monsoon's just going to darken up my Purple Twilight, and I'll be doing a little change. So now I'm adding in some Pinata brass to the corners and some more isopropyl in a little eyedropper or small fine line applicator to help move that brass around. And I'm using an airbrush here. This is the Master Cool Runner 2, which my husband bought. So I didn't do any research on this, but I've had it for a couple years and it works really well. For this piece, it's set at around 30 or 35 psi. So I'm just moving the inks around, trying to create some interesting blends and lines, shapes, and see how I can move that Pinata brass around as well. So I am going to dry this slowly and see if I can get some good layering effects in here with the airbrush. I like whenever I get these little lines up in some unexpected spots, and these blends. And I'm not too worried about making it perfect right now because I'm going to, tweak it afterwards. So I was trying to add some Monsoon to the bottom left since it got lost up above, and I first accidentally laid down a few drops of sea glass. Now I'm going to lay down some isopropyl and then put the Monsoon to help it blend out further. It was just getting trapped underneath that lid a little bit. And again, I'm just trying to get some color over in this corner. I'm not too worried about making it perfect right now. I mean, what is perfect with alcohol ink anyway? But seeing what kind of shapes I can get going. I was definitely getting some kind of, like fantasy vibes with this piece. Definitely some like fairy and so whenever I pull up the takeout container, which is what I used in that with a little weight on it, you can see that there's a lot of ink that was still trapped, so it's pretty wet under here. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and wipe out a lot of this because I like the shape that I have underneath there, and I don't want to mess too much with the blends. I didn't want to have the ink come inside of this particular circle piece. So I'm cleaning up with just a little isopropyl on a paper towel. And that's one of the things I really like about the Graphix craft plastic is that it wipes very clean. So I'm adding some inks to my palette up in the bottom or top left, and you can see I have been bad and I didn't clean out my palette first, so I'm going to have, it's not 100% pure, but it's going to work out pretty well. So in this, I am actually adding some of these ribbons to my work that I like to do quite a bit. I'm going to speed this up here in a second though, because I decided not to keep these, and so you can watch this whole process, but it's all going to be kind of wiped away here shortly. And I'm adding some of them down in the bottom also that again are going to get blended out. Which felt like it was kind of too much for this piece. So this is whenever I'm kind of discovering, oh yeah, I'm not really liking this. So here I'm adding in some of the purple twilight to the bottom right and trying to move this around a little bit to get some interesting shapes. At first I thought I was going to do a kind of flower kind of bloom, and so you can see that's kind of what I'm going for here. And you have a lot of control with the airbrush, but it's also easy to kind of to move inks a little more than you intend to. So my recommendation is to hold it a little further away than you think that you should need to and just take it a little slower. And I wanted to pick up some of these different colors. I felt like it was a little flat, which did work. I mean, I got a little bit more of that sea glass in there. And I get a shape here that I'm happy enough with for the moment. But I'm going to wipe it away. What I really like are those little details, that really dark line right below the wet ink pool right now. So I put some ink on top, or I'm sorry, isopropyl on top, and I'm just going to blend these out. I'm not crazy about what's happening here, so I just keep adding a little more iso, and I'm going to wipe away a little bit of the shape that I don't like. But I did like, I want that wispy kind of look in this corner here. It's just I got these runoffs that I wasn't crazy about right there with the airbrush because I'm holding it way too close to the paper right there. And goodbye, flower. So now I'm going to start working that shape to get some more of these darker, more interesting spots in there, but have it fade out a little bit quicker. And depending on how you hold the airbrush or your drawing tool, of course you can direct the color. So I wanted to keep the darker inks at the bottom and really just have this fade in. And look at that really pretty kind of reddish line that's appearing. So I'm happy with that at this point in time. I'm going to revisit that corner in just a little bit. And here I am going to start putting in some isopropyl to blend out the ribbons that I've decided I'm not going to keep for this piece. But I wanted it to keep some soft edges, so that's why I'm not just going to wipe it all away. And of course with alcohol ink on this substrate, you can really, there's no lost cause pieces here. So I'm bringing in the brush, a paintbrush, to add in some of this monsoon color and see if I want to do like a larger kind of ribbon piece. And I find that whenever I am not seeing a good enough blend, or I feel like it's not really working with the rest of the piece, if I just add a little bit more alcohol and then I bring in my airbrush on top, it'll help blend it so it looks a little more natural instead of just applied to the top. I do that quite a bit. And here I'm going to try some more ribbons. I'm like, oh, that ribbon didn't work. Here, let me try another one. But, of course, I'm not loving it as I'm working on it. And so, again, I'm going to keep adding some ink. And eventually, I'm just going to blow out that corner, which you'll see here in a second. When I look at it now, a day after I've done this, I actually like how it was looking. I just, at the moment in time, I felt like I needed something more up here. I don't know why most of my pieces, I feel like I want like a little flourish or something at the top. It's probably something I need to break free of. So I've got kind of this little flower vibe. You can see that whenever the ink is starting to pile at the top of the petal, I'll call it, I just start redirecting it down a little bit to help it blend in, or else you're going to end up with a big kind of glob of ink at the top there. And so now I'm going to work on this corner a little bit. I don't like this, so I'm going to wipe it away. All that work putting the monsoon down there, and now I'm like, goodbye, monsoon. But I'm going to paint in some of the monsoon instead and see if I can get some interesting, I don't know, I was thinking like a ribbon almost, or not a ribbon, but I guess a ribbon, but like a tied ribbon or something at the corner, like a wreath. And so I try a few different things here, and eventually I settle for something, but of course I've got to try it, wipe it away. And so I'm adding little isopropyl dots here so that way I can kind of blend out that base. And get rid of that hard edge that I had there. And I like those darker lines that I'm getting around, but so I'm trying to keep that one on the bottom right. You can kind of see, I just like the depth and interest that it gives. So I have a Q-tip here that I've put some isopropyl on, and I like to use that sometimes to soften up the edges. I mean, I use them a lot for cleaning up details. These are pointed little Q-tips, but just to soften the edges whenever I want to keep a natural look, but blend it in too. And so there I'm just letting the ink kind of do the blending for me and using the Q-tip to get rid of the hard edge. I'm going to repeat the same kind of process up here a little bit. I'm not sure I really should have messed with it. At the time I felt like I needed to kind of repeat that effect. And so here I'm contemplating, am I done with this? I think I might be done with this. But no, I decided that I wanted to add some details up in the top right quadrant too. So I'm adding a little bit of line work here. Just some drawn in lines. You can get, of course, that kind of effect with a dryer and inks, but after it's at this point, I really didn't want to risk messing up what I had, so I'm just going to draw them in. It's not cheating, it's still your work. I'm going to do the same thing down in the corner here just to get a little bit of that repeated effect. So that kind of darker blob, the dried blob is kind of bothering me here, so I decided I'm going to try to blend out this area and try to do something that makes it a little more interesting and interact with the space up above it so it doesn't look too applied on top. And I like to keep the interest of that line, the outside line, reaching across that kind of flower. And then I have a little bit of ADD, so I saw something. I'm like, oh, let me take care of this right now. I'm in the middle of this other area, but I'm going to start working on a little definition down here with these little ribbon ties. And just by putting a little bit of clear ink or really diluted ink on the top of your brush and going over those areas, you just can lift it a little bit so that way it makes it have more of a three-dimensional feel. Or I don't know that I'm going for three-dimensional so much, but as just give it a little depth. So I'm slowly working my way back up to that blob. Trying to connect it all, make it make sense. As much sense as alcohol ink makes. So here I'm adding in a few of the different colors and just little dots because I'm going to add a little alcohol and kind of fade it out. And first I realized, oh yeah, I don't have any clean, pure, clear alcohol right now, so let me clean out this palette that if I'd done beforehand would have been ready for me. And I'm using the Q-tip again to kind of clean up those edges. And soften some of these lines here. I'm really doing my kind of cleanup and process stage before I decide that I'm going to do a little bit more here. So and then I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot what I was doing. So I'm going to add in some kind of clear definition at the very top here. I see this little spot that I don't want to clean off. I'm just going to add some line work in here by using just plain alcohol and add a little kind of shadow effect to make it look like it's, a little more dimensioned. And then eventually here I remember, oh yeah, I was working on this. So I come back here and I'm going to try a couple different things and land at some overlapping kind of laced ribbons. This is pretty common practice for me of, you try something and then with the brush and then you don't love it, so you try something again, bringing in a little bit of that Aegean Sea to make it not so flat on top of the twilight. And then lifting a little bit, but bringing in some shadow. So I'm attempting the same kind of thing I did on the other side of just adding in a little bit of the color for everything. And that way whenever I put a little ink on here and blow it out, I get a little bit of those different colors, even though they are really muted. But that's exactly what I was trying to do here. And so, again, I'm like, am I done? I'm not sure if I'm done. So I decide I'm going to work on this little bottom right corner with the green and try to make this, whenever I see something like that blob that's kind of sticking out, I struggle with those kinds of things. So I am going to try to make it make sense here. I'm sorry my hand is covering up some of the process. It's hard being left-handed sometimes. I'm generally pretty happy with how this corner turned out. I like the addition of the pop of the purple twilight down here, and getting rid of that bump a little bit. And it's always scary whenever I go over an area that I really like, but I think it was worth it here to make it make sense. And here I liked that line a lot, but I was struggling with it so popped out. So I was like, it looks kind of harsh. Let me see if I can soften it up some. But in the end, I was like, it kind of has a nature vibe to it, fantasy nature vibe, and that's it. That's the end of the piece for now. Thanks so much for joining me.